Frenemies, welcome all to episode 2 of Man of the Hour, and I am shocked that I am doing a second episode after the insane technical difficulties I had uploading episode 1. I had such a technologically stressed, disadvantaged, obstacleized week. Is that even a word? Obstacleized? I'm locked out of my Twitter account. I keep trying to get a verification code sent to my phone. It won't send. I got locked out of my Instagram. I sorted that out. I had problems trying to upload my first episode. I sorted that out. And then the other day, I was working on a whole bunch of stuff on my laptop, and it was on like 10%, and I plugged my charger, and my charger stopped working. I didn't know if it was the charger. I didn't know if it was the adapter, or if it was the wire. It was like 7 o'clock. Shops were closing. Because I was so paranoid because I had so much unsaved Word documents, my fault, but I was so paranoid that the laptop would shut down because of no battery and then all of that work would be lost. I had to try and find someone that could send me a charger because I couldn't leave the house. And what's so frustrating is when you're trying to deal with Apple or Twitter or a bank or a call center, you cannot speak to a person. You have to go through like a robot. You can never really explain what your actual issue is, especially if the issue is really niche. And I'm so over all of these huge big companies just having robots talking to you because they are so frustrating. And to get to talk to one person, it takes you like 20 minutes, and by the time you get to them, you're so annoyed and frustrated, you're yelling at them. And nobody wants to yell. I don't want to yell. I was so frustrated, and the woman who I spoke to at the end of it was so lovely, but guess what? She couldn't help me. You know who ended up helping me? The irony of it all. Technology. I downloaded Kareembox, and I got them to go and buy me a charger and a wire from a technology shop, is that what they call them? Electric shop. And it was with me within like half an hour. The same time it took for me to talk to one person on the phone. By the way, if you guys are not on Kareembox, this is not an ad. It would be great if Kareembox did sponsor me. Hi Kareembox, if you're listening, please slide into my DMs. What a great service. I got my adapter and my wire within like half an hour to 40 minutes. The lesson from that, I believe, is that sometimes the very thing that is your enemy, aka robots and technology, can sometimes be your savior, aka technology and apps. Look closely into your enemy. Look closely at the obstacle that you're facing and think, hang on, are you an obstacle? Are you a vehicle to my freedom? Because if you are, I'm jumping in the back seat and you can drive 1,000,000 miles an hour. It was a journey, let me tell you. And I want to thank everyone who messaged me and DM'd me when episode 1 was out on Apple Podcasts and said it sounded a little bit funny. I think I fixed those technical issues, so I hope it doesn't sound weird anymore. And also, big news, I am now on Spotify. I exist in the Spotify realm. I thought I was existing there, but I wasn't. I particularly want to thank people in TikTok community. A few of my little sound bites got quite popular over there, and I have a few new followers on TikTok who've been messaging me about the stuff I've been posting. They're listening to this episode for the first time, so welcome to my new viewers, listeners. And I also want to say a big thank you. I'm just thanking everybody. It's like I won an award. I'm just doing a second episode. I'm so ridiculous, but I was really overwhelmed by the amount of people who downloaded the first episode. I didn't really know what to expect, and it's cool. Thank you so much for those of you who listened and downloaded and commented and sent me DMs saying what you enjoyed about it and having those discussions with me. So thanks, hello, and welcome. I should address the big royal elephant in the room, the Meghan and Harry interview that aired yesterday night, early morning today, I don't know. I will not be talking about that episode right now, that interview right now in this episode. I'm gonna do a special, intense, dissecting debrief with a very special guest, Nita, who is a friend of mine and a fellow pop culture observer and enthusiast and royal watcher, I will call her. So we did a deep dive about the Oprah interview with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, and I have to edit that and post it either tonight or tomorrow. We just did the interview like 5 minutes ago. And what I will say about the Oprah interview with Harry and Meghan is that, for a lack of a better word, it was super explosive, really interesting, enlightening, and I look forward to sharing my thoughts with all of you guys in the special debrief episode with Nita. But other than that, it's been an interesting week for pop culture. There definitely have been some breakout stories, and I found myself compartmentalizing them into specific areas or subjects or themes that have been coming up. So let's get into it. On this moon day, March the 8th, Now, I'm not sure if you guys saw the story on our Instagram on Man of the Hour, but it kind of broke the internet for a little while. So Taylor Swift calls out Netflix for a quote-unquote deeply sexist joke. Taylor Swift responded to a joke made at her expense in the new Netflix show Ginny and Georgia. What do you care? You go through men faster than Taylor Swift. The joke, said by a character, references Taylor Swift's love life and past relationships. So Swift fans called out Netflix and the show's writers for the misogynistic and slut-shaming joke. But Taylor Swift herself also had some words for them on Twitter. She tweeted, "Hey Ginny and Georgia, 2010 called and it wants its lazy, deeply sexist joke back. How about we stop degrading hardworking women by defining this horseshit as funny? Also, Netflix, after Miss Americana, this outfit doesn't look cute on you." And then she put an emoji of like a heartbreaking. Happy Women's History Month, I guess. So by the way, if you guys don't know, Miss Americana was Taylor Swift's Netflix documentary where she spoke about misogyny and referenced the judgment and criticism she received when she was accused of dating too much in her 20s. This story was interesting to me because, first of all, that joke wasn't funny. I think that's probably its first crime. It was just a lazy, silly joke. Second of all, it was sexist. It is a stupid joke, and the fact that they framed it around Taylor Swift is also, I think, not very good, because Taylor Swift, I think, listen, I am not an anti-Taylor Swift person. I'm not a Swiftie either. I am kind of, even though I love pop culture and movies and TV shows, I'm not the best with music. Like, I will hear a song that's like 5 years old and be like, oh, this is quite a good song. Who sings it? I've always heard of Taylor Swift. I always knew of the Taylor Swift phenomena, but I'm not familiar with her music. And it was like, I think 2 years ago where I first heard Shake It Off or the white shirt song, and I was like, God, this is a really great song. You know, I'm not a huge like follower of hers, but I have always followed the drama or the stories that she's been in, only because I find people's polarizing opinions about Taylor Swift really interesting. And then reading up a lot about her, I've realized that she is a very, talented songwriter, and I've heard her music since being aware of it over the last 2 years. And she's a very talented musician, very talented songwriter. She's a very savvy businesswoman. I really hate that phrase, savvy businesswoman. It's so silly. But she is. She's a shrewd businesswoman in the best way possible. She is breaking ground. She's a pioneer. She's a great example for artists in the media. She's always fighting for the artists' right to own the rights of their work. I think what Kanye West did to her in those VMAs, whatever awards, a million years ago was terrible. I think her whole connection with the Kardashians and all that stuff was terrible. I think she's always accused of being really trying to take control of how she's viewed in the media and take control of how she's perceived. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think everybody should be trying to take control of how they're perceived in the media. So I don't think there's anything remotely terrible and bad about her. I don't know why a lot of people sort of take umbrage with Taylor Swift. I thought that joke was really out of line and silly, and it's sexist. It's a sexist joke because I don't understand why people are not making jokes about John Mayer. He's dated like 1 million people, and there's nothing wrong with that. Same with George Clooney, who dated a lot of young people. DiCaprio dates a lot of young people, a lot of young women, and even though that's covered in the media, he's never really a punchline, yeah? And again, I don't think there's anything wrong with dating a specific type, even, if it's legal and if you are, you have every right to date whoever you want and how many people you want. I don't care. So I don't understand why it's always such an issue when somebody like Taylor Swift does it. And I remember reading up about Taylor Swift back in the day saying, oh, a new boyfriend. And the fact that she writes songs about her boyfriends or her relationships, which I think every artist does to a degree, creates art about their relationships, was so silly. And in the words of Ross Geller, who likes silliness? Is that the line? Who enjoys silliness? I can't remember. Something about being silly. But on the flip side of things, I'm not a comedian. I'm far from a comedian as a comedian can be, because I'm just not funny in that way. I do think that comedians should be able to make fun of anyone they want, whoever they want, whenever they want, like in a comedy setting, I mean. I don't think that some people are above being made fun of, especially if you're in the public eye. But I do think that there needs to be a more level playing field, and I do think that Taylor Swift has been a victim and a target for these kinds of like slut-shaming jokes about her love life, And I think that's why she's very conservative about sharing details about her current boyfriend, who's an actor whose name I don't know, I forgot. But what I do like about this whole scenario is that Taylor Swift said something. I mean, I thought her response was really apt and good. I thought that that's all she needed to say. It was sarcastic, it was informative, and it was sort of reminding people about things. But the problem with somebody as big and huge as Taylor Swift is that when you do say something, it goes everywhere. All the newspaper, all the outlets are kind of covering it, and then you have these legions of fans and her followers or friends or whatever also attacking Netflix and attacking the poor actress who was just doing her job reading a line. She was a young actress. She's a young actress from what I understand, and she was being attacked for saying that line. It's just her job, and this is where it annoys me sometimes when celebrities say things, right? Or don't say things. So if you think about when Beyonce's Becky with the good hair thing came out, everybody was attacking all of these different women and their daughters for potentially being Becky. Beyonce didn't say a thing. She wasn't like, stop attacking, what's that woman who they thought was Becky and her daughter? She wasn't saying don't stop attacking or, don't attack people. She just stayed silent after releasing that song, which, look, she has every right to be silent. But I do think that when you are such a huge celebrity, I'm not talking like you are a B-list or an A-list. I'm talking like you are a institution. You are an icon, like the Beyoncés, like the Taylor Swifts, that when you do say something like this in Taylor Swift's case, you also need to preface that or add something to say like, I've been noticing you guys are attacking the wrong people. Please don't attack the young actress who was just doing her job, or something a little bit more subtle than that. But that kind of silence is strange to me because I would feel bad. But in saying that, we don't know if Taylor contacted this girl and had some kind of messaging thing with her, or if she knows that if she does do that, it's kind of like, when do you stop messaging and talking about something? I guess she just wanted to release a statement, quote unquote, and have it over and done with. And again, like I said, I think it's great that actresses and actors have this power now where they can just talk straight to their fans or call out bad behavior. And I think the other part of this story that went, not this story, but a part of this theme, I think, of like women speaking out, is the other story that I want to talk about, which is Paris Hilton. I won't read the article. I'll just talk about this very briefly, where Paris Hilton talked about her interview with David Letterman after she spent time in jail and how he was quite cruel to her during the interview, where, her PR team had planned with David Letterman that when she comes on to his show, she will be talking about her business ventures and about her new perfume. And her team categorically said that they do not want to talk about her time in jail. It was a very traumatic experience for her. I think she was in there for 2 months or something. And she didn't want to talk about it. And of course, what did he do? He made fun of it. He talked about it more than once. I remember an audience member also made a joke and yelled something out. And David Letterman sort of used that as part of his skit. And apparently during the commercial break, she kind of hinted that for him to stop doing that. He didn't stop. He said he would stop. At the end of the interview, she told him that she was never going to come on his show again. And I think David Letterman over the past 3 weeks has come under a lot of fire for a lot of his older interviews that are resurfacing now. So his interview with Lindsay Lohan, where she cried, where he kept asking about rehab, and she was like, I don't want to talk about rehab. Stop talking to me about rehab. But he kept pushing and pushing with his really weird sense of humor until she cried. Or his interview with Janet Jackson, which was really strange. I've always liked David Letterman. I always thought he was really funny and interesting, but sometimes I've always felt like he missed the mark, and he comes off as like a I don't know, out of touch, a mean guy, like those mean guys in high school that just kind of keep bugging a girl, like, why do you wear your hair like that? Or why do you do this? Or kicking a ball in her direction or something stupid like that. He just came off like that. And she did say, though, that David Letterman apologized profusely over a period of time and did send her cheese or champagne or something. And she forgave him, and then she went back on his show a couple of more times. I think it's great that she talked about that on her podcast with her sister, Nikki Hilton. And Nikki said something really interesting, which is it wasn't wrong of him to bring up the question. I think that's what she said, meaning that, look, he's an interviewer, he's doing his job, but it was cruel. And there is a distinction between that. I mean, often or not, we think about how we conduct ourselves in life generally, or in how journalists or celebrities conduct themselves in terms of wrong or right. And I don't think it's as black as white as that, you know? So I think it was really important for Paris to talk about this topic. I don't know if she thought it was going to go viral or not, but... So then a few days after that, there was another joke that Paris Hilton talked about that was made at her expense by Sarah Silverman, the comedian, at some award show, the MTV Music Awards or something, where Sarah Silverman was doing like a monologue or presenting an award, and she made a joke as well about Paris Hilton being in jail and how they had to paint the bars, I don't know, a specific color or look like a specific thing. It was like a sexually crude joke on Paris's expense, and Paris was sitting there in the audience, and she was really embarrassed. Everybody was kind of laughing, and the camera panned on her. And again, I come back to this thing with the Taylor Swift thing, where, like, you know, some jokes, it's a joke. Comedians should be able to make jokes about whatever they want. But where do you draw the line, right? Like, for me, like, David Letterman had definitely pushed the line, or he went beyond the line, because there was an agreement in place in terms of what they were going to discuss. He ignored that agreement on purpose and made the joke, and then pursued incessantly to make fun of her when she was clearly uncomfortable. Like, that, to me, is not funny. It's funnier if the person's in on the joke with you, right? And I think that's kind of what happened in the instance with Sarah Silverman. Sarah Silverman made a joke in bad taste. But what was interesting is that after Paris talked about that on her podcast, Sarah Silverman also talked about this on her podcast. And just a side note, just loving how everybody has podcasts these days, you know, including me. I'm part of this podcast circle of people, which probably includes like another 1 million people around the world, where she talked about the fact that she remembers the joke. She remembers seeing Paris in the audience and her heart sinking when she said that joke, and seeing Paris's reaction and feeling really bad about it, and how she wrote a letter to Paris apologizing. Apparently the letter never reached Paris, and then Paris then replied on her podcast and said that hearing Sarah Silverman talk about that and Sarah Silverman's apology again on the podcast, you know, brought her to tears. And she was really glad that Sarah Silverman kind of realized she can be funny but not be cruel at the same time. So all of these stories combined about how we talk about people, whether it's within the context of creativity on a show, in a book, whatever, in a novel, in a movie. My voice just dropped. That was weird. Or whether you're a journalist interviewing somebody on TV, or a comedian making fun of somebody on the stage. At the end of the day, there are no official rules or laws about this stuff. So any comedian, any creative person can create jokes about whoever they want. Nobody's going to stop you. So to me, the question around this whole thing is, if you are a writer or creative or a journalist, what is more compelling or creative of you? To write jokes or create scenarios or interview somebody and take the route of being lazy and mean, because that does, I guess, bring results or create a reaction from people? Or is it maybe more creative and more interesting if you create creative work, jokes, or interview people in a way that is funny but considerate? I don't want to use the word kind, because I think kindness is so important, and it's really, I feel like it's kind of being hijacked as this corny word these days, like be kind, be kind, be kind. And let's not talk about the Ellen DeGeneres of it all. But I kind of want to use the word considerate, because I don't think it's a journalist's job or a creative person's job to be kind. But I do think that they should be considerate. And I think you can be provocative, and you can push the line and be controversial, but also be considerate. Whether you want to be that person where you don't care, that's fine. You can be that person, that comedian that doesn't care. I mean, Ricky Gervais doesn't care, and he says whatever he wants. But that's what's interesting about Ricky Gervais. He says all this stuff, but he's never, from what I know, been accused of being cruel in that sexist way, right? Or being persistent, or being almost a bully in his tactics. His jokes are at the expense of others, but he's very tactful and considerate about how he says it and who he doesn't say it about. You know what's interesting about this podcast, or about podcasts generally? Like, I like the stream of consciousness sort of talking, but you kind of realize how much of a bad talker you are. I think I fumble so much of what I say. It always sounds much more cleverer and clearer in my head. But listening back to my last week's episode, I cannot believe how many ums and likes were peppered throughout my podcast. I just wanted to just slap myself. Like, seriously, I cannot stop saying the word I have to just edit all of those out. And sometimes I just sound like I don't make any sense. I don't know if that's my own head or whether you guys agree. I think all of them, the theme really was about how, which I think is great, and it kind of links back to, I guess, the Meghan Markle story, which is, again, coming out tomorrow, about how it's so important for people to start taking control of their own narratives. And in this case, it's all been women. And I think usually because women in the media particularly have not had that power, have not had that freedom to be in control of their own narrative or how they're framed or how they're treated or how they're spoken to in interviews. So more power to them. It's great. The next story I want to talk to is it's a story where I always find myself leaning towards one side and then leaning towards the other side and finding myself firmly in the fence and saying, hang on, no, there is no fence here. We just need to reframe this whole argument. So the story is about Dr. Seuss books. So 6 Dr. Seuss books will stop being published because of racist and insensitive imagery. The titles of the books are And to Think That I Saw It on Mulberry Street, If I Ran the Zoo, McElligot's Pool, On Beyond Zebra, Scrambled Egg Super, The Cat's Whizzer. Dr. Seuss Enterprises, which preserves and protects the author's legacy, said in a statement, "These books portray people in ways that are hurtful and wrong. They made this decision after hearing feedback from teachers, specialists, and academics, and working with a panel of experts to review the books. Ceasing sales of these books is only part of our commitment and our broader plan to ensure Dr. Seuss Enterprises catalog represents, supports all communities and families." So, I'm going to admit something here. I have never really read a Dr. Seuss book. He was not part of my childhood reading journey. I've never read his books as an adult. I know they're really famous. There's like The Grinch and The Cat in the Hat. I understand the cultural references, but I am not a fan just because I've never read his books. I didn't know much about him, and I did a bit of research, and I saw the images that they were talking about that are in these books. So, for example, they have, he's describing a Chinese person or a Chinese person speaks, and the images of a Chinese man with like, I guess a traditional kind of straw hat eating noodles, or Africans, all of them, looking like caricatures, and they all look exactly the same. Everyone sort of looks the same. They don't have any distinguishing features from each other. So yeah, those images are kind of, for lack of a better word, problematic. They are insensitive. But as a writer, as somebody who's read books my whole life, as somebody who is like against the burning of books, the banning of books, I find this story, I find this problem, this issue, strange. I'm like, oh, well, I get their point of view, but I also don't believe in just getting rid of books. The better way to look at this issue is this. Why not create a bigger conversation about these books with children? Why not bring these books into a classroom with kids and explain to them the story of this book? And the writer is actually a story of how much society has evolved from when this book was first written. Explain to them, make it like a quote-unquote teachable moment, educate them that there are so many there's a bigger context of when a story is written, the time it's written, what it means, like a disclaimer. And I think there's never a time that's too early to teach a child, by the way, this book has some great things, or some of these books have some great things, but they have some really terrible things in them as well. And this is not how we should be representing people. I think using those books and making that the conversation, not only with children, but I think with adults, is probably a better way than to just outright ban them for them never to exist. Because if you just ban them, how are you supposed to have those conversations with children? How can you explain to them that, listen, there was a time and place where we looked at other people differently and in more negative ways, in more reductive ways, in more stereotypical ways, in more racist ways? I know my suggestion is probably a lot more complicated than the way I'm framing it, but I think it warrants, I guess, discussion and argument. I would rather know why something is being banned, or understand the context around it than just being told like, nope, you can't read it, it's wrong, it's there's no point. Because I think particularly with children and young adults, you tell them something is banned, they're just gonna more likely read it. Does that make sense? Does it not make sense? Should they just be banned? I don't know. I think books being banned are weird, and whenever you ban something outright, you're always annoying a group of people who will not be able to see why this thing is wrong. I always think transparency and open discussion around topics like this, even with children, makes a lot more sense. So this is not an official story, but I want to talk to you guys about this. I don't know if you guys saw or not, but a crazed fan basically drove through or into the gate at the Hidden Hills community to go see Kim Kardashian. And he was trying to convince security that he knows her, and then he was trying to convince them that he was her husband or she's his wife. And they caught him just as he pushed through the gates or just as he got to the gates. And they took him to, the sheriff. And then he was, questioned and then let go, released. I just thought, how freaking scary is that? And it reminded me again of this whole Lady Gaga story with her dogs and her poor dog walker who was shot 4 times in the chest. And just reminds me again of how scary it is to be some of these celebrities, and how with Kim Kardashian and the whole Paris incident. I wonder if they ever feel fully safe when stuff like this happens. Isn't it do they get used to it? Do they freak out? I mean, again, why do we all have to know that they live in the Hidden Hills? Why do we have to know that they have a mansion there? Why do we have to know exactly where it is? I could probably Google and know where the Hidden Hills are. And why was it so easy for this guy to drive up and go through the gates? Or, I just think, again, I always talk about this topic and I find it so fascinating. Why do we know this? Why are they sharing this? Listen, I guess, again, the Kardashians are a different breed of celebrity where they share everything. And I think now with their show ending, maybe they're not going to be sharing as much. And I know that through her divorce settlement or the negotiations of the divorce, that is going to be her permanent home. Why would you want to live there when you're that famous and everybody knows where you live? Wouldn't you want people to think you live there and you live somewhere else? Even though their show is over on E! I know they've done a deal with Hulu or somebody. Is it Hulu? I can't remember who it is now. And they are going to be doing more Kardashian-themed shows, but will that be them talking about their lives and sharing all these intimate details? Will we be getting a Vogue 72 Questions video of Kim's home, which, by the way, I think is actually really horrendous. It looks like a giant museum graveyard. It looks so not cozy. But I feel like maybe they're going through this phase where they're going to be going into a new phase where they're going to be a lot more conservative about the information that they share, which I think is really a good thing, because, no matter what you think about some of these celebrities that are always in our face, we don't want any harm to come to anyone, right? And so even though we can laugh sort of about this guy who's claiming, she's my wife, I'm going to go see my wife, he's obviously, not all there. I hope he's getting the help he needs. But I think that there's a bigger question here, which I'm always talking about, which is how much should we be sharing about our personal lives, especially if you're a celebrity. And then these kinds of incidents happen. And again, a swath of the public will be like, well, it's your own fault for sharing so much of your life online or, with the media. Anyway, moving on, I have a really, really deeply important, provocative, crazy, potentially scandalous story that I need to talk about. It's huge. It's big. Reese's peanut butter cups without chocolate? Hershey's are releasing an all peanut butter Reese's peanut butter cup with no chocolate. The new versions will have a peanut butter flavored shell instead of the traditional chocolate shell, and a sweeter peanut but with a different texture inside bit. The all peanut butter flavored Reese's peanut butter cup will only be sale from April until August, so make sure you stock up. Where do I get them? How do I get as many as possible? How can I get it early? How do I make it last for a couple of years? I need all of the information possible. I am such a huge fan of Reese's peanut butter cups. I like Hershey's. I used to be obsessed with those Kisses chocolates when I was really young. By the way, for those of you who may not know me, if you're new listeners, chocolate is in my DNA. I am obsessed with chocolate. I love chocolate. I am not a chocolate snob in any way, shape, or form. I will eat any kind of chocolate. The only kind of chocolate that's bad chocolate is old chocolate. I won't eat that. Or chocolate that's been melted and then frozen again. That's gross. But I don't care what brand it is. I don't care what's in it. I just love chocolate. I once met somebody who was also apparently like a chocolate aficionado like myself, and we were having this big, deep, and meaningful discussion about chocolates, as you do, and he goes to me, so what are some of your favorite chocolates? And I told him, it really depends on my mood and the time of the day, but I could want a Kit Kat or I could want a Twix. And then he scrunched up his face and he was like, oh, no, I don't eat store-bought chocolate. No. The only store-bought chocolate I will ever eat is Lindt. And I was like, don't you mean Lindt? And he was like, it's Lindt. So obviously it is Lindt. I found out later on. But this chocolate snobbery, I refuse to partake in. I think it is really abysmal. It's disgusting. It is wrong. How can you be a chocolate snob? All chocolate brands were created equal because all chocolate is good equally. Dark chocolate, milk chocolate, white chocolate. All of them are good. So back to the story. Kisses. I was a huge fan of those. I'm not so much a fan of them right now, but I've always loved the Hershey's white chocolate with chocolate chips. The thin chocolate bar. Oh, it's so good. It's like a reverse Oreo in a chocolate bar form. It's just beautiful. And then I have been obsessed with Reese's peanut butter cups since forever. Like, I'm not joking. During university, I would have, I'd have like a pack, which are 2, sometimes 4, after lunch every day. Obsessed. And the peanut butter inside is so good. The chocolate is so good. The way they're shaped, the way you can eat them, their size, the color, everything is just perfect. So the fact that they are creating a no chocolate version, just a peanut butter version, is so simple yet innovative. Like, how have they never thought of this before? How? And the fact that it's 2 different kinds of peanut butter, like peanut butter from the outside, a different texture on the inside. Like, the whole part of the Reese's peanut butter cups is the texture. The texture adds so much to the taste. So the fact that it's just going to be like a double peanut butter thing, I have to get me some of them. Do I know anyone that lives in America that can send me some? I don't know. I need them. I mean, I'm obsessed with all kinds of Kit Kat. The original, the dark chocolate, the big double one, the one with caramel inside, the one with hazelnut, the random flavors you get from Japan, the green tea, the sweet potato one. I love them. I love Kit Kats. I love the creative side of Kit Kats. I used to, believe this or not, from the ages of like 13 to 16, I was obsessed with sending letters to people, and I would send letters to so many different people and institutions or whatever, and just write them anything. And I was obsessed with sending letters to chocolate companies. I've sent letters to ice cream companies. I've sent letters to chocolate companies, to drinks companies with my suggestions. Like when I was 13, 14, I sent a letter to Kit Kat, and I was like, hey guys, I have an idea for a Kit Kat flavor. Can you please make a Kit Kat coconut flavor? Like, what a great idea. What a great sound. Kit Kat coconut. And I even wrote coconut with a K. This is pre-Kardashian stuff. I was so ahead of my time. But don't fill it with a coconut cream, or don't do a bounty thing where it's just coconut inside. Have coconut shards in the chocolate. Isn't that a brilliant idea? I wrote to Mars and I was like, listen, guys, I love all of the chocolates that you guys create, but Mars is the one chocolate that I think has potential to be better. It needs a wafer at the bottom. It's too sweet. I love the nougat stuff inside the Mars bar, but it needs a wafer at the bottom. Can you please create like a special edition wafer at the bottom? And I even once wrote a letter to Milky Way, and I just wrote them a literal love letter to Milky Way. I was like, you guys are the most underrated chocolate bar in the universe. Funnily enough, they're called Milky Way. And I think you guys are great. I think this is the best chocolate I've ever had. Like, it's so good. It's like spongy. It's perfect. The nougat inside is so good. Like, why aren't you guys as popular as you're better than a Mars bar? Why is a Mars bar more popular than a Milky bar? I don't understand. So I am really passionate about this topic, and I'm so excited about the Reese's peanut butter cups. I need to get me some of them as soon as April hits, and I don't know how I'm going to do it. I need help. Does anybody know how I can sort this out? Maybe I'll tag Reese's peanut butter cups about this and just be like, hey guys, hello, Huge fan here. You need to like send me some stuff. Maybe they can sponsor an episode. How wonderful would that be? So if you're listening, Reese's Peanut Butter Cups / Hershey's, please feel free to slide into my DMs. They're open. Or email me at manofthehour@gmail.com. Anyway, those are the stories for today. So I wanted to end with the word of the week. And it's quite an apt word for the topics that I discussed today. And the word is vituperative. 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 So it means abusive, fault-finding, strongly and unkindly critical. A vituperative argument or a vituperative divorce would be long, loud, and full of ill feeling. So basically, they mean Twitter or the comment section under any article. So for example, the online debates about Meghan Markle can be quite vituperative. Or for example, that podcast, Man of the Hour, is never really vituperative in tone or style. Or for example, are you having a vituperative argument with a loved one? Have a Reese's peanut butter cup, all peanut, no chocolate shell. I'm sure it'll make things better. If somebody asked me, how would you describe your relationship with social media? I would say vituperative, very vituperative. Anyway, guys, that's it for me. Make sure that you like and rate this podcast episode on whatever podcast platform you're on, including YouTube. Also, jump on Instagram, follow, like, share. Please DM me or email me on manofthehour@gmail.com with any kind of moral conundrums that you're facing. Hey, perhaps you are dealing with a vituperative relationship that you want to discuss with me, because vituperative relationships can be quite toxic to our mental health, and I don't want you to be stuck in a vituperative relationship or a vituperative state of mind. So I implore you to email me so I can help you navigate through these vituperative times. See how easy it is to add a new word to your vocabulary? It just can happen like with a snap of your fingers. Anyway, look out for my very special debrief episode about the Meghan Markle and Prince Harry interview with Oprah Winfrey with my very good friend Nita. Hopefully it'll be up by tomorrow or the day after, while I'm going to try and ride this wave of people talking about this very important interview. I would say culturally defining, generational defining interview. I really believe that things may never be the same again. Toodaloo.